Hi everyone, this is Jay, and in this video I'll talk about scoping. So the scope of a variable in program is the lines of code in the program where the variable can be accessed. So to demonstrate this for you guys, let's make a variable called main, okay, and let's assign it the value of 1, okay, and everything inside here, everything in here is called the main flow. Every line of code we write in here is called the main flow. Once we get into function, we will get to the local scopes. Okay, so now we can access this variable from inside here. Now if we say print, if we print main and run this, as you can see, we did have access to it inside here. But can we have access to this variable from inside a function? Let's see that. So if we define a function called f, okay, and this function takes no parameters, and let's see if we can print x from inside this function. Okay, so let's say main, okay, and now let's call this function f. Alright, and let's run this program, and let's see if we do have access. And indeed we do have access to this variable from inside the function, because this right here is called, as I said, this in here is called the local scope. The main flow, the main scope. Okay, and everything in here is available to any function. Okay, so we can use this variable inside this function. But can we define a variable inside a function and use it outside the function? Let's see that. So if we define a variable called inside, okay, and then we give it the value of 2. Okay, let's see if we can print that variable from outside the function. Let's see if we do print inside. Okay, as you can see, this is the variable, and we're trying to print it in here. And if we run this, it's gonna give us name error. Name inside is not defined, because this inside, everything inside a function is called the local scope. Everything inside this function is in the local scope. Okay, everything outside the function is called the main flow. Okay, this is where we write variables. That's why this variable is available inside this function. Okay, but this variable is not available. This variable is not available outside the function because it's in the local scope. It's not in here. It's in the local. Okay, and anything in the local scope is available only in the local scope. So this variable available only inside this function. Okay, so we can access this variable only inside the function. Outside the function, no. Okay, so to give you more details, okay, let me define another function inside this function. And I know this sounds very complicated, but yes, we can define another function inside the function. Okay, and let's give it the name x. Okay, and all this function will do is print main. Okay, so we still trying to print main. Okay, we still trying to print this, but from inside another function inside this function. Okay, so let's do main. Alright, and let's call this function, and the way we call this function is we're not gonna call it in here because we don't have access to this function in the main flow. Okay, we don't, because this function is defined only inside this function. Okay, inside the f function. So we don't have access to it inside the main flow. We only have access to it inside this function. So the way to call this function is inside the function we do x. Oops, sorry, click the wrong button. Alright, so we do x, 2 parentheses, and this is the way we call functions, but we call it from inside. Okay, so just to go over it again, I have a function called f. I defined a variable called inside, and I gave it the value of 2, and then I defined another function inside the f function, and I gave it the name x, and this function takes no parameters, and the only thing it does is print main, and print this variable main right here, which equal to 1. Okay, and I called this function inside the first function. Okay, we can't call it in here. Okay, notice the indentation, it's very important. We're moving to the outside function and calling it from the outside function. So the way this will work is if we call the first function will run this and then go to here and see that we're calling a function, and the function is this. Okay, so what it does, it will call this function. Okay, so if you let's comment this out first, and then let's run this, and the same thing will happen. It'll print 1. Okay, so we do have access to this variable. So anything in the main flow and in here, not inside the function, anything outside the function in the main flow is available inside the function. Okay, is available to the local scope. Okay, we can use it inside another function, inside another function, inside another function, but anything inside the local scope is not available. Nothing inside the local scope, available to the main flow. Okay, so we can't access this function in here. So if we try to access this function in here, okay, it'll give us another error. Name x is not defined. Okay, so we don't have this function name x. The x function, we don't have it in here. It's available only inside the function f. Okay, so, and one more thing. Okay, let's see if we can access this variable, this inside variable. Okay, I don't know what happened there, but alright, let's continue. Let's see if we can access inside this variable in this function. Okay, so let's delete this and put inside. Okay, so what this will do, it will print this variable inside, which have the value of 2. Okay, so if we run this, as you can see, it does have access to this, because this is inside the local scope, and this function is inside the local scope of this function. Okay, so we do have access to it. We do have access to this variable because it's in the local scope, and this function is in the local scope of this function. Okay, but can we define a variable inside this function? Let's call it inside 2. Okay, and let's give it the value of 3. Okay, and we don't need this print statement anymore. And let's see if we can go down here and print inside 2. Okay, see if we can print this variable. Okay, so what I did in here is I defined this function, and we don't need this variable anymore. I can delete it. Okay, and I defined this function. I defined another function inside the f function, and I called this function x. And inside x, I defined another variable called inside 2. Okay, and I gave it the value of 3. I'm sorry. And then in the outside function, in this function, not this function, inside this function, I printed inside 2. Okay, let's see if we can print. Let's see if we can do that. Let's see if we can have access to inside 2 from the outside function. Okay, so let's run this. Okay, see what's happening. Run it again. Okay, and name inside 2 is not defined. Okay, so again, this function, we're inside the local scope of this function. Okay, this function, all this is the local scope of this function, of the f function. Okay, when we go over to here to this x function, we make another local scope to this function. Okay, and inside this local scope, we have a variable called inside 2. Okay, and have the value of 3. This variable is available only to this function, to the local scope of this function over here, the x function. Okay, is not available to the f function, but everything inside the f function, inside the local scope of the f function, is available to the x function. Okay, we can't access this variable from this function. Okay, from the f function, the main function. Okay, so yeah, I know guys, it's a little bit complicated, but keep practicing. You will eventually get it. So yeah, this is all I have for you guys today. Thank you and have a good one.